The following program is a public access production. AT&T Broadband is required to provide time on this channel and make it available to its customers pursuant to its franchise agreements with the communities we serve. AT&T Broadband is not affiliated with the following program or the producers of public access programming and is not responsible for the content. The following program does not reflect the opinions of AT&T Broadband or its affiliates.
Welcome to Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name and politics is our game. And tonight we go to the 5th Congressional District race, as we do next week. Tonight we start out with the candidate who we'll call, we understand who is the front runner in that race, and that is Rahm Emanuel. There are 7 candidates in the Democratic primary, 5 in the Republican primary. And that's next week's guest will be Mark Auguste, who we also understand is the front runner in that race. Although there's not a lot of polling data out there, and some of that polling data you see, as we were just talking before the show, you know, there's some polls that go around that Steve Neal writes about, and it turns out, gee, the poll was taken in September before, I don't know, before anybody was in the race. So we call Mr. Emanuel the front runner just based on our very rough feel of where he is and his funding and his message, et cetera. But if there's another candidate out there and we haven't gotten in touch with who would like to be on the show, get in touch. Contact us at jbcg@aol.com. That's J as in Jeff, B as in Berkowitz, cg@aol.com. Or send it the old-fashioned way to Post Office Box 243, Winnetka, Illinois 693, and you will see both of those addresses across the screen as we go through the show. The show is being taped on January 10th, the year 2002 in Winnetka, and our guest, of course, Rahm Emanuel, is in fact an alum from New Trier West, so he's a local boy. He's returning to the scene. Graduated in 1978, right?
77.
77, okay, and that's a stone's throw away. New Trier West is in Northfield, stone's throw from where we tape in Winnetka. But before we go through Rahm's background, let me just ask Mr. Emanuel to tell us a little bit about the 5th Congressional District.
Well, for lack of a, these are kind of round geographic area.
Keep it short.
Well, but basically if you took the most southern eastern border, it'd be Armitage and the lake, and it cuts up through Wrigley Field and then through the Ravenswood community, and then it's basically a horizontal swath across the north side of the city all the way to Melrose Park and Elmwood Park. And so that is in all the neighborhoods like Porridge Park and other areas that are part of the city, Sauganash, Wildwood, they're all, Wells Park, they're all in that district. And it's kind of I mean, this is not exact, but it's a horizontal cut from the lake over to the suburbs and everything between. So you have kind of the Gold Coast and you have the neighborhoods that abut up till here. So that's the district. And it's a fascinating district of good, hardworking families.
And indeed, the congressman was from that district. Well, Dan Rostenkowski was in the Congress for 36 years.
Dan Rostenkowski.
Was it all of those years representing the 5th?
Yeah, I mean, that was his number. But, you know, he had, well, there's always, every 10 years, some redistricting, but you had Frank Annunzio once represented parts of that district, good portion of it. The eastern parts at one time, based on some of the lines, was represented by Sid Yates. So it's had some of the kind of real titans of the Illinois congressional delegation.
Okay, and then Mike Flanagan, of course, took that district. A Republican took it for 2 years in the Republican year of 1994. And when Dan Rostenkowski, our former guest on this show, ran into some problems, and then the Dems took it back for the last 6 years in the name of Rod Blagojevich, who of course is giving up the seat, leaving this as an open seat now as he is in the Democratic primary for governor of the state of Illinois. Mr. Emanuel is a native of Chicago, right?
Born and raised.
Born and raised, grew up on the northwest side,
North
at least
side.
until the 4th grade. when
North
you-
side on Winona and Broadway.
Okay.
And then after that, after 4th grade, in Wilmette.
Wilmette.
And then when I came back from college, the rest of the time in the city, except
Okay.
for a periodic visit to Washington.
And of course, an undergraduate degree from Sarah Lawrence College, right?
Uh-huh. And
Master's degree in communication
at Northwestern,
from Northwestern.
where I taught when I came back.
Okay. Yeah, we read about that, and we read about your salary, and
Yeah.
read about excruciating detail from Lynn Sweet, your bud, right?
It's
Well, just about. Anyway, and and you, of course, were the senior advisor and fundraiser for Mayor Daley and his Richard M. Daley when he ran for mayor in 1989, right?
89, 91.
Okay. National campaign director for the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee in 88.
Mhm.
So you understand politics, right?
You left out Paul Simon and,
Right.
and a middle child of 3 boys.
All right. Well, he's rounded it out for us. As he
my mother would be upset with you, Jeff.
Yeah, we don't want to upset moms on this show. I know how to keep things straight.
Okay.
Of course, as he mentioned, Rahm Emanuel was a top advisor to President Clinton for 6 years. 2 to 3 years when you came back then as an investment banker, first with Wasserstein and Perella, right?
Yeah.
Which then became Dresdner, Kleinwort, and Wasserstein. And now it's time to play hardball. First, let's go to the politics, then we'll go to the issues, okay? Lynn Sweet writing, what?
I thought in this show you'd go policy first. I didn't realize
Oh,
that.
well, if we're making an exception for the 5th Congressional District, when you're in the city working
Yeah.
with all those polls, not polls, well, we don't know which is
Go
which.
ahead.
Lynn Sweet, writing in the Chicago Sun-Times on January 3rd, accuses you of running as a populist while having earned $7 million in the last 2 years. How do you plead?
Well, listen, I'm pleased, and let me tell you this. I've been successful in my professional life, both in the public and private sector. And I'm pleased about the success I've had in the private sector over the last 3 years, but I'm most proud of the success I've had for 20 years working in the public sector. I worked for, you didn't mention this in the biography, but I started out of college working for Illinois Public Action Council, working on right-to-know legislation and fighting some very powerful interests. And that's no different than when I was in the White House fighting the NRA to pass the Brady Bill. That's no different than fighting the health insurance industry when we helped create the health insurance, public children's health care interest that gave about 150,000 children here in Chicago health care who didn't have it before. When I announced, Dolores Sweeney talked about how she didn't have health insurance until Kid Care, which is part of that program that I helped create.
Which would be CHIPS.
It's CHIPS on the national level, Kid Care described here in Illinois.
Okay.
So, you know, regardless of where I've been in my life, the battles I've taken on and the causes I fought for have always been the same. Now, has my income changed since when I started Illinois Public Action Council? Yeah. But my interest and my purpose and what I drive towards hasn't.
Okay, so you're saying you can be a populist even though you earned $7 million in the last 2 years?
Sure,
Do you feel- actually, is that accurate? Are you a populist?
No, I would call myself, if you're looking for a political label, I would call myself a progressive. I think that, you know,
Are you a card-carrying member of the Democratic Leadership Council?
I'm a participant with Al Fromm and Bruce Reed, and I happen to believe in the ideas of a new Democratic
Democrats, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
But see, I think, the question is, Bob Rubin, who was a successful Treasury Secretary, does that make him any less of an effective person? Was John Kennedy any less of an effective progressive president? Was Franklin Delano Roosevelt any not that I'm in the likes of that.
Ronald Reagan.
Well, but my point is, it's not
George
what
Herbert
it's
Walker
not what
Bush.
it's not what your income is. It's what are the things that motivate you? What do you want to do?
Ram, I couldn't agree with you more.
Okay,
There's nothing wrong with being successful
I
in,
wasn't
the,
suggesting
in, the,
that. Yeah.
in the free market, just as there's nothing wrong with being successful in the political market, right?
As I said, I've been successful in both endeavors. I'm proud of that. I'm pleased about my success in the private sector that I've been able to provide for my family, and I'm most proud about what I've been also to do in the public sector for families and communities throughout the city and country.
Let's probe a little bit on that. Let's take a cue from Lynn Sweet, and she mentions that part of the way you earned your big bucks in the last year was working on the ComEd Pico deal and putting that together, which is now Exelon company. And she points out that part of that the deal resulted, I don't know if it's true, she says that the employment was cut by about 10% as a result of that. So you get into issues of mergers, which also result in efficiencies and lower costs, which I think is all to the good for society. But in that transition, sometimes some people suffer and some people become unemployed. Does that, is that an issue in this race as to how you were involved in a merger, and how would you look at mergers, if you were involved in some oversight activities in the U.S. Congress with respect to the antitrust division, and let's say ComEd Pico was merging and needed that approval. It's a little more complicated there.
Well,
they
first
did
of all,
get approval from the...
It's done, right. I mean,
Right.
here's the
But
thing.
for companies like that, in other
Yeah.
words, are your views colored? I guess this is what Lynn would say. I can't speak for Lynn, but I guess she would say, are your
You're doing
views
such a
affected
good
by it?
job.
Well,
Let's see. Exelon is the third largest company in the city of Chicago. It is outside the city of Chicago, the public entities, it's the largest employer in the city of Chicago. I think it's a good thing that rather than a number of the other companies that were leaving, Amoco, Ameritech, that left and were bought out, we kept the headquarters here and we kept jobs here. Had we lost that headquarters, we would have lost jobs. And it's the largest employer outside of the city of Chicago, based here in the city of Chicago. I think that's a good thing rather than losing a corporate headquarters
okay, well,
and losing those jobs.
Yeah, but let me just say, we'll go on, but just on the policy, you wanted to go to the policy side. I happen to agree with you,
Okay, go
what you
ahead.
just said.
Okay.
What I wondered is, can you generalize from that about your views about mergers? I know
Right.
you're not running for antitrust chief,
Yeah, I'm not.
but it comes up in Congress from time to time, on various
Well,
committees.
I think, look, I mean, I applaud, let's take Congressman Dingell out of Michigan, who has used, let's take it this way. It's not a merger. 3 weeks ago, on a very cold Sunday, I stood out and held a press conference and talked about the employees at Enron and what happened to their 401k, and I issued a 4-point plan on what needed to be done to protect them. It was similar to what Senator Boxer and John Corzine had talked about for New Jersey and California. And I laid out a 4-point plan. Now, one could say because of your background, you're skewed. Well, I'm not skewed. I'm happy to want to represent and talk about all these workers who should have their 401ks protected, and we have some basic legislation on the books that protect traditional pensions. We don't have those type of protections for 401k. We have a new economy, and we need new rules for that new economy. So I don't think my experience in any way hinders me. Again, I get back to what are your interests? What are the things that motivate you? What are the things that you care about? Those things have been consistent for me my whole life.
Well, since you raised Enron and you raised the 401k and your views on that, we looked at it. Let's go with that just for a little bit. So your view on that, I guess, is that in a 401k, a company is not barred in any way from not diversifying. So they could hold, as many people may have with respect to Enron, virtually all of their stock in the form of Enron stock, and most people would say diversification is the way to go. And you're saying you want to require that. Is that right?
Yeah,
you want to require
there were
them
3
to
or 4
diversify.
parts, Jeff, to what I talked about, but one of them, you have 60 companies. Listen, this is not too distant. What happened to Enron happened to the Lucent employees. This is not just an Enron situation. You have about 60 major companies today who have their employees have a preponderance of their 401k invested in the company's own stock. We have rules. If you go and look at the chart, the New York Times had a wonderful story on this. The basic pensions have a requirement for diversification. Only 10% of them are in the companies themselves. As you go up in the 401ks, it gets as high as sometimes as 53, 54%. Okay. My point is, 401ks are not a new economic tool, but we have rules and regulations as it relates to pensions and their investment that make them more secure. We need new rules for the new economy. The 401ks and a new investment tool. We need new rules to ensure employees are protected.
Okay.
And you can't have a different standard for what happens up in the corporate suite for what happens down on the shop floor.
Right. No, well, my views are not important, but I don't disagree with that. But let's go. Let me ask you: do you think Nancy Kasich would disagree with any of what you've just said about 401ks?
I don't know.
You don't know her views, huh?
I mean, I don't know, Jeff. You, God willing, you'll have her on the here and she'll answer the question.
Yeah, we should say we've been trying for about the last 4 months to have Ms. Kasich on the show. So if there are any Kasich supporters out there, know this: that since I think October, since she indicated interest in running, we've been there, and all we've heard is, well, she's trying. She's unavailable. So we'd like to have her on, so we're not in the position of asking Rahm what Nancy's views are, and perhaps we could have the two of you on together.
Okay.
All right. But well, it's a little hard, but what's your sense in terms of how you, talking just about the Democratic primary, how do you differentiate yourself from Nancy or anybody else in that primary? What are on the issues side, are there any issues that you sense differentiate you? If somebody said, you know, I'm a voter here in the 5th, and I want to know what are the two or three things why to vote for Rahm Emanuel?
Nancy will talk about the issues or the
Okay.
agenda she wants to put forward. I'm going to talk here about what I want to do.
All right. You tell me the 2 or 3 key issues for John Q. Public in the 5th Congressional District. Issues. Why should they vote for Rahm Emanuel based
Well,
on
I'm
issues?
going to also say it for Sue Q. Public, if that's okay with you, too.
Oh,
All
that's
right.
okay. You're always one-upping me.
Well, it's your half hour, and I'm just going to eat on it for a little while.
Okay. Go ahead. Modest guy.
Look, let's take 3 or 4 issues. Primarily, I think, the area of healthcare. I was part of a small group that helped the president create Kid Care, which insured 10 million uninsured children. 150,000 children, as I explained earlier, have health insurance today that didn't have it before. They no longer have to use the emergency room as their primary care. I want to take that program and expand it to family care. We have 38 million, sometimes 39 million, sometimes 40 million, that's the strike zone, of uninsured adults who are working in this country. The cost of that program is $25 billion over 10 years. That's the same amount of money as the Republicans advocated in a retroactive tax cut in the AMT for corporate America.
But let me just interrupt. Let me interrupt, but you can go
Yeah.
ahead with those, but I'd like to interrupt just a little bit so we can do this while it's relevant. When you say it's $25 billion,
$25 billion.
to insure 38 million people
That is
for the next 10 years total.
Right, that's the you have to renew it after 10 years. That's how you get it scored in the budget, CBO. Okay, that's how it's scored.
$25 billion.
Right, it's the basic package. Okay, there's some people. There are other packages at $36 billion. Okay, that's the basic package of medical coverage. So an adult doesn't use the emergency room as the primary care.
One other question, then you can go on. But is it your sense that of
It's
the
just like my family dinner table.
Yeah, is it your sense that of the 38 million, all of those people are really trying to buy insurance, but they don't have the means? Because some people suggest a number of those people opt not to buy that insurance.
My sense, well, first of all, it's 38 million uninsured. I'm not going to give you a stereotype of 38 million uninsured
No, but
adults.
I'm saying if some people don't want to buy insurance, should you force them to do so?
No, I think we should. No, I'm not suggesting
Or should
forcing
we
them.
give it to them?
Yeah, I think we. Yeah, I think the wealthiest country in the world.
Even if they can afford it, even if they have the means.
That isn't the 38 million, Jeff. The 38 million, we don't have health insurance. It's not, by and large, you may find in that 38 million the needle in the haystack, that person that
Why
can't.
don't you just means test it and say if all of these people have low incomes, we'll give it to them. If they don't, we won't.
Well,
You would do that.
there will be an income. I'm sure there'll be an income piece of this as a percentage of
All right,
poverty
go ahead.
level, which
Go
is
ahead.
usually how they do it.
All right.
Right.
Go
That's one. 2, the area of crime. Worked on passing the Brady Bill, the assault weapon ban, the historic 94 Crime Act that put 100,000 community police on the street, of which we have about 1,400 here in the city of Chicago. My uncle's a police officer in the city of Chicago. Been an officer for 23 years, a sergeant in the 17th district. I have 3 specific ideas. We've made a lot of progress in fighting crime, reduced it. We're now beginning to see it slip. So what is the next
When
set
you
of...
say we, who's we?
We, this country.
Oh, okay. Because I always thought it was more a local state issue. It's
No,
not?
well, let me say this.
Chicago, you know.
Let me say this. You could say that, but I think the Brady Bill and the assault weapon ban had a lot to do with it. That's why gun crimes went down. I think
Why are they going up now?
Right, well, there's a question about why they're going up now, Jeff, and I think one of the things you have to look at is part of the economy. Part of it is whether we have to look at some of the police tactics that we need to be using. Let me just try to finish out what you asked me originally. A, I want to expand the Brady Bill to include juveniles. Today, if you're a 15-year-old, you commit a violent crime on your 18th birthday, and you're convicted for that, on your 18th birthday, you have a right to get a handgun. I don't believe a violent 16-year-old or 17-year-old has the right at 18 to get a handgun in this country. I want the Brady Bill to cover juvenile crimes. 2, the bulk of juvenile crimes are committed between the hours of 3:30 and 6:30 in this country. 75% of them, not violent, all types of crimes. We have a child daycare tax credit for $5,000. It stops at 12. I want to extend it to 16, the age of 16, for after-school programs. I want these kids to learn the values of the classroom, not the values that Johnny's teaching them on the street corner. We have the most critical hours, are 3:30 to 6.
You want a tax credit that, just make it clear what you're saying.
We have a child daycare tax credit, $5,000 for working families up to $100,000 a year. It ends at the age of 12 for that child. Extend it from the ages of 13 to 16 and use it for after-school programs. So parents can have their kids in after-school programs when both mom and dad are working.
Which is sort of, you mean the school will be providing, in a sense, daycare and charging for it?
Not daycare. They'd be providing after-school math and science programs.
Adolescent care.
Right. No, they're providing after-school programs.
After-school care.
And parents, we'd be using the school. The teachers would have work after hours.
And they would
the
be
kids,
paying for it and getting a tax credit.
The tax credit.
Okay.
And the kids
Right.
would not be on the streets.
Okay.
That's how you focus on the juvenile crime element.
So you're sort of you're sort of a believer in the free market, because you're looking at ways in which you can use tax credits to accomplish some objectives.
I'm also a believer in trying to get a whole thought through.
No, but just tell me, you are a believer in the free market.
I
right?
think
you shouldn't be embarrassed to say that.
No, but what I'm saying is I actually think tax credits can be an effective tool to achieve a goal. Third, in the area of crime, a little shy of 1/3 of crimes today are committed, violent crimes are committed by people on parole and probation who have a drug problem. They're trying to feed their habit. We on the federal government level, our federal government subsidize state and local governments' prison construction and maintenance. I want to allow, not mandate, allow the states to use that monies for people who are on parole and probation who have a narcotic problem. The condition of being on parole or probation is they must be in a mandatory drug testing and drug treatment program. The reason is, if you are on parole probation and you're free of your drug problem, your recidivism rate is 6%. You're on parole probation, you still have your drug problem and a drug abuse problem, your recidivism rate is 75% for those folks. Allow the states to use that money, have the flexibility for mandatory drug testing as a condition of parole and probation.
Meaning if they violate
If they violate it, you go back to jail.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, go ahead. I don't want to run out all our time. Give me a chance. We'll go to your next issue.
The third area is in the area of the economy and what we have to do. I have an idea about a Build America infrastructure investment. We have a 21st century economy sitting on a mid-20th century at best infrastructure in our roads, our bridges, our power lines, our rail lines.
Do you think that now is the time, though, for the country to that it can afford to do those things?
Yeah.
Given the amount of money that is being required to spend on national security for terrorism?
I think it's part of, listen, we built a national highway system based on our national security. What would be so wrong about building?
Where would you, I mean, are you a believer that, are you okay with the deficits that we appear to be running in the next few years? Are you okay with that?
No, because I think actually, to tell you the truth, is one of the things that we have to, the federal government needs to do is to convince the market that it does have control of the fiscal purse strings. Because bringing down long-term rates is key to having businesses investing in.
This is the Bob Rubin philosophy.
Well, it happens to be quite successful.
So you're not okay with the deficits. Are you saying that since we're in a recession now, we should have a surplus?
No, I think what you should do is set priorities and investment. One of them
No,
is...
but I'm just asking you, I'm switching over to national economic policy.
Right, I'm following you.
Okay, and on the economy, would you favor, one, the Bush plan, the stimulus?
I would not favor the Bush stimulus. I favor another
stimulus in general? Okay,
I would
you
favor
tax rebates?
Well,
$500 per person, right? For people who didn't pay income taxes.
Well, I wrote a piece in the Cranes. Okay, and one of the pieces is, if you look at the original summer tax program, it left out low to moderate income workers, and I thought
those are people who don't pay income taxes, right?
But they get an earned income tax credit. Correct. They don't. Some of them don't.
They don't pay income taxes.
Right.
That's why they didn't get a rebate.
But that's why we have an earned income tax credit. Ronald Reagan in 1986 built the earned income tax credit. In 1993, Bill Clinton doubled the size of it. In 1997, we also expanded it in the balanced budget agreement. In each period of time, you've had major economic growth. And I think low to moderate income workers, rookie police officers, firemen, first-year teachers, deserve a tax cut of $300. They should not have been left out.
What about those households, and there's some of those in your district, maybe quite a few, where there are two people, two policemen, policemen and policewomen, a policeman and a teacher, they may be up to 70 or 80,000. They're paying in taxes.
And
their marginal rates, part of the Bush plan would be to cut their rates as well as others to accelerate that. He says that's going to have a sort of a supply side improvement of the economy and jobs. Your answer?
And Jeff, as you saw in my piece, I was talking about in the stimulus, that is, we designed the stimulus bill. I didn't say anything about that tax piece. What I talked about.
That's why I'm asking you.
What I talked about is we have to.
Would you agree with that?
I have no problem. I mean, the goal of any tax cut should be focused on middle income to moderate income families. And I think the tax cut for the wealthy should be scaled back or postponed until the economy really kicks in.
Well, some people would say it would kick it in faster. Well, let's go over to
first of all,
education.
the
We
bulk
only
of the
have a few minutes left, so let's go over to education.
Sure.
Important issue in your district, the 5th Congressional District. You know the State Board of Education has said that 1 out of every 2 schools in the city of Chicago is still a failing school. My guess is quite a few of those, or a number of those, are in your district, right? And some people say,
They're all over.
Well, they're all, but a lot of them, they're all over the city of Chicago, but you've got your share, and so your voters care. Why not say to those people who've got kids in a failing school district, we want to give you some choice. We're spending about $7,000 per person in the grade school. Here, we'll make it simple for you. We'll take that money, reach into my deep pocket, take my $7,000. This is what we're spending per year in grade school in the city of Chicago, not up here in Winnetka. We put that in the backpack, strap that backpack on the kid, and the parents, just like your parents at one point made a choice, where they would send you to school. They chose to send you for part of, you told me earlier in the show, part of the time to a private school. Nothing wrong with that. I'm a believer in private schools as well as public schools. The main thing is it gives people a choice, a way out of failing schools. I want to know, because I see you have the endorsement of the Illinois Education Association, the National Education Association. They don't believe in the kind of choice I just said. I want to know, does Rahm Emanuel believe in that choice?
No, I don't believe in vouchers. I don't think they're the right solution. I'm not for abandoning public education. And even though, in all due respect to your question about me and how I was raised and educated, my parents never asked for state sponsorship of our private education, which was a religious education as well.
I understand that, but some people can't afford to do that, Ron. I'm not critical of your parents. I'm a supporter of your parents, as are you, I'm sure.
Good, I'll make sure you can
Let
call
me just
my
say,
mother at the end
I
of
only
the
want to
show.
interrupt to say we're gonna continue to speak as the credits roll, but
Okay,
I got to thank Rahm Emanuel, candidate in the in the Democratic primary, front runner in the Democratic primary, for coming here and in the Democratic primary in the 5th Congressional District, for coming here and subjecting himself to this tirade of questions voluntarily. We really appreciate
I'm
you
trying to
coming
get a
here, Rahm.
tirade of answers.
Now you can do it.
The basic point for me in education, you have 3 basic infrastructure problems: the building, the teacher, the principals. 1/3 of all principals in the Chicago public school system are eligible for retirement. We have approximately in this state 2,700 classrooms without full-time teachers in them. It's going to grow to about 5,000 according to the IEA over the next 4 or 5 years. We have a shortage in this country of 2 million teachers over the next 10 years. I went to high school, grade school in Jameson. It was last rehabbed in 1957. Those are the needs of our education. We need smaller classrooms, teachers in there.
We sit in Winnetka. We have schools 100 years old. New Trier is 80 years old. It's a fine school, one of the best in the country.
New Trier West is not 80 years old.
Well, really, school in
not,
Winnetka is 100 years. But New Trier East is. We just had the centennial.
Right,
100 years. You were there.
And it's been rehabbed many times since. And the point here is, Jeff, is the way to deal with this is through choice in the public school system. We have very good...
Why not choice about the private schools? Why not give them a little competition? You're a believer in the free market. Make it work.
Because the fact is, those vouchers and those tuition credits vouchers only pay a portion, and it's a hoax on those families.
No, we're going to do it 7,000. We're funding it fully. Would you, if you're saying we're not giving them enough?